The past few weeks we've worked with quadratic equations and we've learned about the graph, we've learned about the parent function, which is y equals x squared. We've learned about the graph, which is a parabola, and it has a U-shaped form. And we've learned different methods to solve quadratic equations. We've learned how to solve by factoring, by finding square roots, by completing the square. We've discussed solving by graphing briefly, and today we're going to be solving quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula works every single time, and so does completing the square. Solving by factoring doesn't work every single time, and solving by finding the square roots doesn't work every time either. And sometimes you cannot solve by graphing because there is no solution. So that is the reason that it is important for you to know all the methods. Solving by graphing means that you're going to find the points in which the graph is crossing the x-axis. Sometimes it will never ever cross the x-axis, so then that means that there is no solution. Sometimes the graph is going to be on top of the x-axis, like on this one, like on the parent function. And when that happens, then there is only one solution. So it is important for you to know that when you're working with quadratic equations, you can either have one solution if the graph is laying on top of the x-axis, two solutions if the graph crosses the x-axis more than once. Let's say that I have something like this. Then you have two solutions. And it can have no solutions if the graph is, let's say that is on top of this. It will never ever cross the x-axis. It can also go upside down like this. It will never ever cross the x-axis. So those do not have any real solutions. They have imaginary solutions, but they do not have real solutions. Okay, so let's begin with the quadratic formula. You've seen the quadratic formula before. It is x equals negative b positive negative square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So we're going to be using this formula to find the zeros of functions. Whenever you're asked to solve a quadratic function or a quadratic equation, you will either be told to find the roots or to find the zeros or to find the solution. It means the same thing. Basically, you want to find the value or values of x that make the equation or the function true. In this case, we're working with functions. So let's begin with this. Let's say that I have, and I'm going to kind of call it 1a. I have function of x equals x squared plus 3x minus 7. What we're going to do first is identify the values of the quadratic coefficient, the linear coefficient, and the constant. The quadratic coefficient is the value of a, the linear coefficient is the one that we know as b, and the constant is the one that we know as c. So in this example, a is 1, the linear coefficient b is 3, and the constant is negative 7. So now we're going to use our quadratic formula. I'm going to write it down again here. X equals negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So let's begin. We're going to have x equals negative b, which is 3, plus minus square root of b, which is 3 squared, minus the quadratic coefficient a, which is 1, the constant, which is negative 7, over 2 times the quadratic coefficient, which is 1. And we're going to use the order of operations, which you guys know as PEMDAS, to solve this. So we will have x equals negative 3 plus minus square root of 3 times 3 is 9. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 7 is positive 28 over 2 times 1 is 2. So then we'll have x equals negative 3 plus minus square root of 9 plus 28 is 37 over 2. And that is the solution. This one has two solutions. Remember, this, the plus, minus, or the positive, negative sign, mean that you have two roots. One of them is negative 3 plus a square root of 37 over 2, and the other one is negative 3 minus a square root of 37 over 2. Since I cannot simplify the square root of 37 any longer, I'll just leave it like that. I don't have to do anything else. Let's go ahead and work on another example. Okay, let's work on another example. G of x equals x squared minus 8x plus 10. We're going to identify again the quadratic coefficient, the linear coefficient, and the constant. The quadratic coefficient a is 1. The linear coefficient b is negative 8. And the constant is positive 10. And then we're going to substitute this with the quadratic formula, which you should have in your notes now. So it's x equals negative b. So I'm going to write negative 8. The first negative sign, that one is part of the quadratic formula. This other negative sign is part of the linear coefficient b, which happens to be negative here. Positive negative square root of b, which is negative 8 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 10. All of this divided by 2, a, which is 1. And again, we're going to use the order of operations. So x equals negative times negative is 8, positive negative, square root of negative 8 squared is 64. Negative 4 times 1, negative 4 times 10, negative 40, over 2 times 1, that is 2. So then we have x equals 8, positive negative. The square root of 64 minus 40 is the square root of 24 over 2. On this example, I can still simplify the square root of 24. 24 is the same thing as 4 times 6, and 4 is a perfect square. So I can simplify this as 8, positive negative, square root of 4 times 6 over 2. So now the square root of 4 is 2. So it will be 8, positive negative, 2 square root of 6 over 2. And I can still simplify this a little bit more. This is a fraction with a common denominator. So it's the same thing as having 8 over 2, positive negative, 2 square root of 6 over 2. 8 over 2 is 4, so x equals 4, positive negative, and then 2 over 2 is 1, so I don't have to write it down anymore. And this is the answer. X equals 4, positive negative 6.